Horror movies are notoriously easy in just about every which way possible. Cobbled together films that see a bunch of teenagers hunted down by a dastardly ghost are a dime a dozen, and do their job admirably at providing lowbrow entertainment with a dash of blood and boobs to really spice things up. Whether it's an ancient burial ground, a disturbed Ouija board, or a stupid dare gone wrong, cheap and cheerful horror comes in distinct and classic flavours that define the bread and butter of the genre. And whilst these movies are excellent fun, real terror doesn't come from jump scares and CGI shadows. Real terror is born in the depths of the unknown, crafted by filmmakers into an overbearing presence in a movie that never quite explains itself or its intentions as long as the runtime plays out. Like the exceptional It Follows, films that don't give away their reasoning and remain shrouded in questions are some of the most impressive in the canon, making for endless theories as our imaginations do far more work than a straight-laced narrative ever could. Not knowing what the is going on when the credits roll is half the joy of a really great film, after all. I am the unknowable entity of Ash from What Culture, and these are 8 mysterious horror movies that give nothing away. 8. Raw. What starts as a strange dive into the world of hazing at university soon spirals out of control in Raw, which prides itself on portraying a visceral, stomach-churning Freshers' Week that changes Justine's life forever. A devout vegetarian that is disgusted by meat, Justine is a talented student who aims to become a talented vet, and will take part in all manner of degrading rituals in order to be accepted into the wider school community. An integral part of this ritual is to eat raw rabbit kidney, which is unpleasant enough for poor Justine's moral compass, but becomes a far bigger problem when it breaks her out in a rash and sets off an uncontrollable craving for flesh wherever she can get her hands on it. You know, just the usual food poisoning. As the film unfolds, it becomes apparent that her family have all been cursed with the same weakness to meat, but the how, the why, and the what are never touched upon. Is it a genetic disease, an actual curse, a weakness? Has it been in their family forever, or did it just start with their mother? Is it just the women of the family that want nothing more than to chow down on barbecue human ribs with a side of literal Bloody Marys? Raw is an intimate look at Justine's struggle above all else, and its tantalising mystery is just as impenetrable to us as it is to her. 7. The Borderlands. When it comes to found footage movies, there is always going to be some mystery involved. How the hell someone found the death tapes of a bunch of people making a fake documentary never fails to be an unanswerable question. But in The Borderlands, it is the ending that makes for a compelling mystery. Set in the English countryside, a religious brother, a tech expert, and a priest are sent by the Vatican to investigate a local church that has been reopened and brought up reports of supernatural activity. Getting into their research and discovering that all is not as it seems at the religious institution, the men discover that the site used to be used for worshipping an ancient pagan deity, with the final moment seeing 2 of them enter a hidden stairwell that leads to a labyrinth under the church. The walls then close on them and begin to digest them out of nowhere. Wait, what? It seems to suggest that the deity is a part of the site itself rather than an obscure being. But exactly how it came to be or what has really been going on under its influence is as mysterious as to how it got a whole human-sized digestive tract set up there in the first place. That the film gives no clue to this bizarre ending only makes it that much more intriguing, since a giant person-consuming monster seems like something you would mention before it gets to, well, you know, consuming people on screen. 6. Suspiria 1977 and 2018. The 2 Suspiria movies we have been gifted from the cinematic overlords are very different, but they both draw from the same pool of weirdness that is Dario Argento and Daria Nicolodi's original screenplay. When 1977 is a vivid, jangling puzzle to be pieced together with witchcraft brewing at the edges, the 2018 version takes a little time to hide its magical trappings, with each building a world where a coven are channeling power through a dance school and have Susie Bannion in their sights for their grand, wicked schemes. Whilst both films do outright tell a story, they don't make sense without some grasp on the source material. Argento's story is born from Thomas de Quincey's essay titled Suspiria de Profundis, released in 1845, that describes there are 3 sorrows that curse humanity with depression, grief, and despair, envisioned as Our Lady of Tears, Our Lady of Sighs, and Our Lady of Darkness. The original Suspiria in particular feels like an audio-visual experience to define witchcraft rather than an outright exploration of the coven that live in the dance school, with De Quincey's work looming over the project yet never being dissected in any detail as Our Lady of Sighs attempts to come back to her full potential. The Three Mothers trilogy does go into more detail on this, but even in the new remake, there's far more power, ritualistic practice, and hidden secrets that are never explored in any detail. Darkness lurks under the surface as to Banyan's true intentions, but the how and why of her getting to a final form is as much a mystery as to how the witches came about in the first place. 5. The Neon Demon. Nicholas Winding Refn's art house breakdown of the horrors of the fashion industry is as intoxicating as it is symbolic, with Elle Fanning's rise and fall as a model prodigy serving up mesmerising visuals and dreamy atmosphere without really distilling the truth of what happens throughout the runtime. Fanning's Jessie moves to LA to pursue a career as a model, befriending a makeup artist and 2 other models that slowly become both infatuated and jealous of Jessie's beauty. As the film goes on, Jessie's youth and aesthetics provoke her friends to murder and consume her, attempting to take her essence for their own gain as they continue on with their lives. However, Jessie seemingly poisons 2 of the trio from the inside, with the last remaining model ending the film taking advantage of her newfound success, born from the same infatuation that Jessie enjoyed earlier in the movie. It makes sense that a film about fashion is style over substance, but there's a hidden narrative picked apart from theorists that sees the entire thing as a ritualistic practice. One continually enacted by the makeup artist and her friends in a coven to retain their status and power. A subtle undercurrent of witchcraft that takes time to pick apart, the Neon Demon feels like the spiritual successor to Suspiria, and just as mysterious in its true intentions to boot. 4. Videodrome. Blurring fiction and reality always results in some of the most mind-boggling movies to attempt to get into, and nothing is more mind-boggling and literal in its getting into than Videodrome. A swirling body horror nightmare that melts flesh and machinery into one big amorphous mess, Videodrome is the descent into a hallucinatory hellscape by TV station president Max Wren. Wren is on the hunt for the most outrageous footage he can get his hands on, everything from gratuitous violence to softcore porn, wanting to broadcast only the most sensational clips to his depraved audience at home. And then Videodrome, the most sensationalist show of them all, lands in his lap. The series depicts violent acts that end in murder, alongside inducing hallucinations in viewers from an errant signal that induces malignant brain tumours. Wren is slowly brainwashed from his exposure to Videodrome and programmed to take out lowlives that engage with his content, before being turned to the other side again and encouraged to kill himself to ascend and destroy Videodrome once and for all. If that doesn't make sense, then don't worry. That's why it's on this list. Being a Cronenberg film, you can count on VCR tapes being shoved into body cavities and humans being mangled into unrecognisable heaps of writhing flesh to entertain you if the convoluted plot doesn't appeal the first time around. A few rewatches later though, and we all get there in the end. Long live the new flesh. 3. Midsummer. What most of these mysterious horror movies have at their heart is an ulterior motive played out by their antagonists, never quite revealing the whats and whys of their actions in a parallel to their clueless central characters. Midsummer thrives with this subjective viewpoint, in particular from Danny, who travels to Sweden for a midsummer celebration with her boyfriend and his pals to learn about the Haga commune's customs as the group spend time with the locals. Director Ari Aster has created his own iteration of what this celebration would be, throwing in a bit of ritual sacrifice, a whole load of hallucinogenics, and a dead bear in for good measure. Hey, that's what I call a good time. Just as he previously did with his work on Hereditary, Aster slowly ekes out a larger plan for his characters that isn't clear to much anyone until the very end. In both cases revealing cult shenanigans enveloping ignorant bystanders who don't catch on until it is far too late. Aster is an expert at keeping his cards close to his chest, crafting a dark underbelly to a story that unravels slowly but surely, as an experience rather than it does a fully formed narrative for unwitting audiences. 2. Audition. Those familiar with Takashi Miike's particular brand of horror will know Audition well, a film that appears on the surface as something of a light-hearted drama before devolving completely into a sadistic nightmare. Oyama wants to begin dating again after the death of his wife, and decides that the best way to do this is to build a lovely foundation on lies and deceit in a TV casting that doubles up as a speed dating round for his perfect woman. When the captivating Asami attends and seems to be the ideal fit for his particular tastes, he thinks he has won the jackpot. That is, until both come clean about their true natures. Asami is a dab hand with a set of needles, as it turns out, and very accurately, very painfully sticks them into Oyama's paralysed body at the close of the film in a torturously long revenge sequence that comes largely out of nowhere. Audition seeds clues in flashbacks and hazy scenes of Asami's past, and also a strange man that she keeps in a bag and sometimes feeds with vomit, making for a confusing, disturbing finale that is as repellent as it is harrowing. The true motives of Asami aren't ever spelled out for an audience, instead falling back on visuals that evoke pain in all of its forms. You have to work to piece together this film by the end, but it is entirely worth it. 1. Perfect Blue. Satoshi Kon's masterwork of an anime is as confusing as it is beautiful, depicting some of the most mentally exhausting and downright disturbing scenes put to animation that never once pull together in any discernible way. That is not to say the film isn't excellent. It's just such an involved depiction of a fractured mind that trying to catch all of the threads of what is really happening is an almost impossible task. The impenetrable narrative is all a part of Perfect Blue's charm though, as pop idol Mima decides to break away from her sweet image into acting by taking on a gnarly TV character. In the role, she's coerced into playing a rape victim, which sours her squeaky clean image and sets an obsessed fan after her who won't abide by the change in her persona. The scene marks a defining point where Mima's life cracks down the middle, with both the world's perception of her and her own perception of herself branching into separate entities that plague her life as she tries to pull back control. Different versions of Mima roam free as she tries to get a hold on reality, moving through time incoherently, which makes for a mixed-up mess of a narrative that requires patience and rewatching to interpret as you see fit. Whether it has got something to do with her manager's interference, a strange dream, or something else entirely, Mima's story is not one that reveals itself easily.